Welcome to the show, everybody. It feels weird, but
a little.
It'll be normal before you know it. So if you've been listening for a long time, if you're first time, you don't know anything's off. But
it's true.
If you've been listening for a long time, this is the part where I would normally say, Dustin, what beer are you drinking? But we don't have beers today. And we won't have beers ever again.
No.
I decided to change things up.
Yeah. I don't know how much do you think I should explain on this note, Jake? I feel
as much as you're comfortable with.
Okay.
I'm
pretty comfortable, dude.
It was your idea, and I think it's a noble idea, and yep. I'm down for switching it up as well. So it's all good.
So decided through some thinking and just with a how would I put this, colorful past and kind of interesting relationship with alcohol, just decided to completely cut it out. So
going sober.
To go sober. So completely dry. And you being the badass that you are, we're like, well, if you're not going to do it, then we're not going to do it. And I was like, you don't have to stop. And you said, nope, we're just not going to do it. So I actually have to thank you for making that a little bit easier. And so sobriety. What?
yeah. I imagine it's a big change. I think it's definitely the beneficial one. I'm myself am in an interesting position where I had already kind of told my wife that I wouldn't be drinking currently because I don't think I've said on the show before, she's pregnant right now with the baby, so she can't drink. And so I was like, I won't at all the whole time you're pregnant. and then I was like, except for the show, because I have to do it on the show. And then I was like, and also like every time we go to somebody's house, they're like, here, have a beer here.
Right.
I was standing outside my neighbor's house at his fence and just hanging out while the kids were playing, and he just walks out and hands me a gin and tonic or something. I was like, oh, cool. I'm in a public park, but I don't care. That's fine. So it definitely comes up, and every time Krista gives me the eyes, and I'm like, I'm being polite. But now it will be much easier to be like, no, I'm staying strong for my wife now so that she can go through it. And I think it's a definitely beneficial thing for this show. It's the kind of thing that it's not a big deal until people make it a big deal.
Right. And I will say the irony though is that since I went sober, I have had more fucking alcohol ads show up than ever before.
It's those demons trying to suck you in.
And I'm like, what the fuck is this? I told my daughter that I was just like, you can't scroll anything without getting bombarded with a bunch of ads for any kind of alcohol. And she just laughed. She goes, well, someone out there thinks, you need to still drink. And I was like, well, that someone's wrong. So, So if you're used to hearing the beers crack, I guess the Planet of the Apes episode was the last time that you're going to enjoy that. No.
Foreign Films.
Foreign Films is the last one. Yeah. So,
So big change, but also not a big change. And we thought it also was appropriate because this episode comes out on our 4-year anniversary.
Right.
Which is crazy that we've been doing this thing for 4 years and got a little better all the time over those 4 years, I think. And so I think, what day is that? So June 13th, I think, was their first episode in 2020. And that's a Thursday. Maybe I'll drop this episode a little early to celebrate the anniversary. So I guess as part of that, our very first episode was our top 10 action and adventure movies. We thought that makes so much sense. It's a very popular genre, and those two things are commonly combined, and we'll do them all at once. And little did we know how foolish and young and juvenile we were, that we did not take it very seriously. And I think over the last few weeks have been taking it very seriously.
This fucking list.
You told me it was the hardest one since our top 10 all time.
Yeah.
Which I believe. I definitely felt that too.
Yeah. It was tough because, like, I didn't want to just bombard it with all the ones that I think you would expect me to, although I'm sure a lot of mine you're going to laugh and be like, well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I kind of feel you're going to have a couple on yours that I'm going to be like, yep, that's... Yep. But then I also realized my biggest mistake with that very first episode we did was it was all adventure. So completely cutting the adventure part out of this is what really made it difficult, because I was like, well, now I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to be thinking.
Yeah, so that was a decision for this episode. We're doing just action. So cutting out all of the adventure movies. We'll do a separate top 10 adventure list at some point. And it's also, in my mind, I knew that we were going to redo our top 10 sci-fi at some point. Mm-hmm. We've already done horror. We've done all time. We've done superhero movies. We've done all these. We've done top 10 James Bond movies. Like, we did all these other ones that I'm like, do I still put them on my list, or do I like go with the continuity, the current canon that we have established? So our, if you want to hear the old episode, the very first episode we ever did, the first 6, I think, episodes we ever did, quality's not great, but they are still available on movieboners.com for free. Mm-hmm. But we are redoing them so that we can do them correctly and also have some pretty decent quality as well.
Just a little.
But before we do that, so even though some things change, some things don't change, which means we need to check into the movie draft. But you are catching up. You're catching up quite a bit. Your IMDb rating is only 2/10 behind mine now, because you had Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which was very good. If came out, and it is also very good. Furiosa is about to come out, but early reviews say it's very, very good. And then Garfield movie is not really. It's a, what do we call these? It's on your bench, so you could take it, but it's not hurting your score right now.
Right.
And The Fall Guy continues to not have the box office that I thought it would, although everybody in the world says it's great, and they are right. But I don't know why that is. It's just not there. It
doesn't make sense to me.
So you're still about 900 million behind in the box office, but chances are you might catch up, make it competitive. But the IMDb rating is definitely very competitive at this point.
Yeah. So
that's that. Let's see. New things. Is there anything new things you've seen lately?
Yeah, I've watched a handful. You know me, I tend to try to watch at least a few new things. Well, I did see The Fall Guy. Okay. And I don't get why it's slumping at the box office, because that movie was like, yep, this is the exact kind of movie we need right now. It's the exact kind of movie you would want to kick off a summer box office run. It was so enjoyable. Everything about it was perfect. And it's very much for like you and I, or fans like us that give stunts so much love. Yeah. This is that movie for people like us. I mean, before the movie even started, there was like one of those intro messages from Ryan Gosling and the director David Leitch, cool. Just talking about how it's a love letter to stunts. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty incredible, the stunts they actually, I mean, the whole movie is real stunts. Mm-hmm. The whole thing was done that way. And they do something that you and I are always talking about. We wish more movies would do again, because they used to do it all the time, especially in action films. During, like, it's not a spoiler, don't worry, folks, but like during end credits, they play the montage of like,
oh, cool.
And they
like
do
a Jackie
that.
Chan movie.
Oh my God. I almost like jumped up and cheered when they started it. The movie's incredible. The numbers be damned. That movie deserves to be just high echelon of summer films for 24.
That's awesome.
Yes, it's so good. And for like you and I being such huge Ryan Gosling fans, man, I think this was the most fun role to watch him in since The Nice Guys.
Okay.
Like he's that style character, but with so many more stunts. It's amazing. And then I know I'm way behind the times. Don't judge me. I did finally watch Fallout.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. And I absolutely love that. I've never played the game. I have no context. I probably won't ever play the game because I'm just not a gamer at all. But the show was badass. I can't wait to see where it goes from season 1. So that was awesome. And then I was a sucker. I wasn't planning on watching this, but I just kind of got roped into it because I wanted to see just how offensive it actually got. So I watched the roast of Tom Brady.
Okay, yeah, sure.
My only complaint is that I didn't watch the live broadcast.
Yeah.
I had to watch the edited where Netflix freaked out and took out all the booze for Kim Kardashian and took out some of the drug jokes that were put into it. But there were jokes during that, Jake, that I was like, holy shit. Like, oh my God. I can't believe they said that one. And then there are lots of moments where you're just like, that might be the worst joke ever attempted on the stage. Like, like
a bomb.
Oh God, there's some real bad bombs on it.
Interesting.
But
was it good? Was it enjoyable overall?
It made me laugh. It did.
Okay.
It made me laugh.
That's wild.
Nikki Glacier, however you pronounce her last name.
Yeah,
she
Glacier,
was
I think.
Definitely the highlight of the roast. She was the best.
I believe it. She's pretty funny.
Yeah. And then I did go and see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Nice.
It's so good.
Yeah?
It was so good.
Lives up to our hopes and dreams, huh?
It did live up to my hopes and dreams. It really did. It is kind of long, and you do kind of feel how long it is. But that's okay because, it's the start of a new trilogy. It's a continuation, but the start of a new. It's weird. But it was really good. And I was so excited. I just learned right before going into it that Kevin Durant plays the king.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've been seeing him all over social media, like in character, talking about being in character and and seeing him do the voice and do the movements. And
I just feel like that dude does not get enough love from fan base. He's so much fun to watch. And most of his roles, every time he pops up, I feel I'm the guy that's like, yes, it's Kevin Durant. Yeah. And Proximus Caesar he's a good character. He was what I was hoping to see. So
good.
Yeah. So that's what I watched. What about you, bud?
I didn't really watch anything new. I got close a couple of times. We started watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire and then just wasn't really being grabbed by it or paying close attention to it. And so I stopped watching it. Might go back to it at some point. I'm not sure. But the one thing that we definitely did watch, and I know you saw as well, is we got an opportunity to review a brand new movie that just came out early May in the States, and in the beginning of June, right when this episode comes out, is available for digital in the UK. And so we watched a new movie called New Life, which I watched, and also my wife watched because she was abnormally interested in it. She saw the poster in our movie library, and I was like, well, I have to watch that for the show. She's like, that sounds awesome, let's watch it. I was like, oh, okay. That sounds good, because she doesn't really watch non-mainstream movies as much. Like when we did our B movies episode, it was the worst experience for her ever. She's like, what the hell are you watching? And so
you're like, brilliance, that's what.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say this is a B movie, but it is definitely an independent movie, and
Mhm.
so those often don't grab her at all. So I was very intrigued by that. So yeah, we watched this movie called New Life, just came out, and I thought it was a very interesting movie. What did you think about it?
I thought it was all right. I thought it was again, I went into it completely blind.
Hmm.
That's become kind of my favorite thing to do with these, like when we get invited to watch these screeners.
Yeah.
So I had no clue what it was. I was just really excited that Penny from Lost was doing something new, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's Penny!"
Yeah.
Um, which I know you had hinted, like, "Hey, there's going to be a familiar face that you're going to be excited to see," and you were
Hmm.
correct. I did get a little like, "All right."
Yeah, I love
Um,
her.
yeah, I thought it was all right. It's definitely an interesting concept. Um, I think it's probably one of those where the more I think on it and kind of maybe rewatch at some point, I'll probably enjoy it more as time goes on. It
Hmm.
took me not knowing what to expect from it was
Hmm.
very kind of different. And then once it all starts actually kind of piecing together what was going on, I was like, oh, right. There was just a couple like story decisions that I thought were like, okay, I'm not sure what that pertains to the overall arc of the story, but that's all right.
Yeah.
This is okay. Uh, but no, I didn't think it was bad at all. I thought it was entertaining. It is interesting. Uh, I think the ending, well, the final like third final
Hmm.
act, I thought was really cool. Uh, yeah, it was another one where I was watching it and I was like, oh my god, we're watching another like, yes, it's very independent, but it's also really, really like clean. It's shot really
Hmm.
well. I really liked that. I thought that was really interesting. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It looks fantastic. I think it's made in Canada. And I think probably one of the more interesting parts is that it's, so John Rossman is the writer and director of it, and it's his first feature film. It's his
mhm.
only IMDb credit. And that kind of blew my mind that something this good came from someone that hasn't made much or made anything official really before.
Being the
That,
first project, that definitely bumps it up because for a first outing, it is
mhm.
pretty like okay, you're on to something, sir.
Yeah, I thought it was very impressive, and I I really liked it, and I thought it was very different. So it's a story about this girl who you don't know anything about, and she seems to be on the run. And then Sonia Walger. I should probably look that up. Sonia Walger, the Penny from Lost. She basically is trying to find her and catch her, and it's billed as like a horror thriller movie. And for the like the first half, there I was like, I mean, there's kind of horror elements. She's being kind of hunted or searched for or chased and stuff, but it's not really scary. And then, like you said, the last act, there's something that happens. It's not really a twist. It's just something. The story progresses in a way that you're like,
Yeah.
okay. Like now, this movie is something else that I didn't anticipate it being, and it belongs in a category that we are both fans of and have
Mhm.
seen a bunch of different versions of that thing before. And I liked this way that it told this kind of story. It was a very different kind of approach to that topic, I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
So I thought it was
I do
very
respect the
interesting.
approach to it and the uh, yeah the style. I don't want to say what it progresses to. It's
Hmm.
one that I would hope people don't like ruin it for themselves and read about it first. This is another one that I would recommend. Like going blind because it'll. I think it's more beneficial knowing where it's or not knowing where it's going
Yeah.
instead of having a certain like expectation of what you should be seeing because it's
Hmm.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was quite good.
Mhm.
Um, hold on, let me see where it's available. So yeah, like I said, it's out in online in the States and the UK now. Pretty much just available to buy and rent. I don't know that's on any actual streaming services, but I would say it's a recommend to check out if you like
Yeah.
horror thriller movies like this.
Very patient horror thriller.
Yeah.
So you can't really go into it expecting like horror action right out the gate because you're not getting that.
Yeah. Very patient, but very intriguing the whole time. All right. So,
all right.
I think that's all we really have going on here. Although, if this is the middle of June, which it would be if it was our 4-year anniversary, maybe we could tease that we have something very exciting and interesting coming up in the next 3 to 4 weeks. The early July, this summer, early July, maybe Independence Day, we have a big announcement coming, and we're very excited about it. And I think it's something that will make the show even better for people that are already fans of it, or also make the show better long term for other people to discover it. And we're very excited about it and having a great time with it already. And so excited to get you all involved. Keep a lookout for that on the old social medias and everything, because that's going to be coming out.
And now people are like, what the fuck is Jake talking about? Don't worry. It's called a teaser for a reason.
Called a teaser. Are you teased yet?
Ew.
Yeah, maybe a show called Movie Boner shouldn't talk about teasing people. Anyway, so let's get into our top 10 action. Is there anything you wanted to say anniversary-wise?
I guess.
If we're redoing our first episode, I don't know that we have to like tell people where we started or why we came up with the idea or anything like that. We basically did that on the I Was a Teenage Film Snob podcast. So just go check out James's show.
I think really it's just kind of incredible, and I can't believe it's been 4 years. I can't wait for the future. Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it's been 4 years. Like really crazy that it's been 4 years, considering this started as kind of just a little whim and fun idea just to kind of combat all the negativity and also get hang out with the friends again. So
yeah,
I've had a blast with this, and I can't wait to keep growing it, and with you obviously, and with all of you guys. This has been a joy. So absolutely.
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed it, and I did go back and check out that first episode just to see how bad it was, and the quality definitely was not great. I'm glad we get to redo it. We had no concept of how far away from the microphones we should be, and it was rough, but also really funny. I think it was a lot of the same stuff, and so a lot we haven't changed, but also a lot has changed. You moved to Texas, and that's been obviously. I think it would be fun to be in the same room with you, but it's also made my life easier as the person who edits the show. Although we don't have the echoes in each other's microphones and all that stuff. It's much easier now. So I think our quality overall has gone up, and that's really fun. And it's also fun to just have the longevity under our belts to say yeah, we're not going anywhere. We've done it for 4 years. We'll keep doing it, and we got a long ways to go still, I think.
Yeah, we do, and it's only going to keep getting more fun. I mean, we have some visions for the show, so it'll be cool to see that stuff progress. So very exciting.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so we're gonna make up for our original episode, and get into correcting what our top 10 action movies of all time are. And you said, I didn't have all action or all adventure, like you said, but I did have quite a few adventure. And so I approached this very much with action. What does it mean to be an action movie? And what do I think are the best versions of that? Keeping in mind that we've done Bond, we've done comic books, and there's other movies that I think are great action movies, but they are also sci-fi movies? Are they also fantasy movies? Are there something that they are maybe a little more than the action part? And so I tried to say, no, action needs to be the first and foremost thing about it, and try to keep it as pure as possible, I think.
Okay. I only really gave myself two challenges. I didn't want to repeat from previous lists, and I already have movies kind of set aside for future lists that I did not want to take those from those. So trying to like keep stuff separated, that was a little challenging. And then for my own personal stuff, I decided, we've done so many superhero things on here. I was like, I'm going to force myself to not do a single comic book movie, period.
Okay.
And the moment I did that, and then was like, and no adventure films either, I was like, Jesus Christ, what did I do to myself? I took away like the majority of my action. But I did learn something. Well, I shouldn't say I learned, because I feel I've always known this, but action movies to me really boil down to like the same kind of themes, and that made me chuckle as my list finally came together, because it was like, okay, Jake's gonna be like, Dustin, your list might as well be called this instead. And I can't argue that, but these are my action movies.
Yeah, I had a similar theme. Almost all of them fall into the category of jacked dudes, which is probably no surprise to anybody. But I have a wife, everybody. I have a wife. That's okay. But there's some badass chicks as well. I try to balance it out.
Okay.
But that's probably my theme if I have one.
My theme is not jack dudes. I can tell you that.
Okay. That's good. We don't overlap there. All right. Let me just look at this really quick. Okay. I had wanted to move something around, and I didn't remember if I did or not, but it looks like I did. And so I think we're ready to go. I also think I will go first, because I think I've made you go first the last couple times.
I think it is your turn. The floor is yours, sir.
I'm very excited. My number 10 favorite action movie of all time combines two of my favorite action stars of all time, and also kind of pokes fun at the genre, and also pokes fun at themselves, but also makes for a quintessential ideal action movie. Has the very fun and blasting synthesizer soundtrack. It has guns. It has explosions. It has two jack dudes. So my number 10 is the Tango and Cash.
I knew you were going to have Tango and Cash. I knew you were going to have Tango and Cash.
I love it. And I love Kurt Russell most of all, but I love Sylvester Stallone as well. And combining them into a single movie is just phenomenal. And then having a kind of a buddy cop movie, and it's done in the same sort of clean cut versus bad boy aesthetic, and they're at odds with each other, but also needing to work together and one up each other. And it's very, very awesome. Seeing Sylvester Stallone play like kind of a by the book, wear a suit, glasses kind of cop, and then Kurt Russell is more of the unhinged, like Lethal Weapon kind of Mel Gibson Lethal Weapon kind of character. So that's really, really fun. I really, really love it, and it's just they are great opposites, but they also have great chemistry with each other. And Sylvester Stallone makes references to Rambo, and everything throughout the movie is just a really, really fun. Has everything you want. One-liners are perfect, flawless. So many fun scenes and phrases are said the whole time. And yeah, it's just a fun time. That's one of the things that I was realizing watching a lot of these movies, is that action movies are best when they don't take themselves too seriously, because if they're a little silly, I like them more, I think. Because if a movie is straight serious or takes itself super seriously, then you kind of just get more on like the thriller end of the spectrum. If it's going to be an action movie, it needs to be a little insane at times, I think. And and some of the best ones are definitely those, on my side at least.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at my list and I'm like, well, I have a couple ridiculous ones for sure, but I also have one that takes itself very serious. But we'll get to them. We'll get to them. You might judge my list a little. Now I'm worried. Not really. I'm not really not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 10. It's kind of funny. I feel like it's been a minute since you and I have had kind of a funny crossover ish.
Okay.
Your number 10 is a Sylvester Stallone film, and so is mine.
Fantastic.
This is one that I have been so mad at myself for never having on any of our lists. And every time I rewatch it, I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with you? How come you didn't bring this one up? And now I am. Redemption. Well, no, I guess I had the villain from this movie on our top 10 villains, but the movie as a whole is just fantastic. I absolutely love this movie. Always have, always will. But my number 10 comes from 1995's Assassins.
God, I love Assassins so much.
It is just, every time I watch this movie, I'm like, this movie is so fucking good. It's so badass. Like, it is just, everything about this movie is great. Everything.
Yeah. It really is. And Sylvester Stallone is phenomenal, but Benicio del Toro, no, not Benicio
Antonio
del Toro.
Banderas.
Antonio Banderas is the highlight for me. I know exactly why you had him on your top 10 villain list.
Yeah. He's just, and their chemistry together is fantastic. Like, it's one of those things where I think I've grown to appreciate their chemistry way more the more I watch it. Now, I'm not a little kid that just thinks it's two badass guys. But it's just like, to me, I'm like, man, in the 90s, Antonio Banderas did like Desperado. He was still kind of becoming a name, but not really. And then they team him up next to Stallone, who is very established, the Jack dude, right? And they're going to have him just go unhinged. And it's great. It's so good. But I love the whole story of like the assassin side of the world and the contracts, and you've got Stallone who wants out of the game but can't help but constantly accept a new contract, and then he like gets mixed up in rescuing a mark and then protecting the mark, and it's such a great film. I
feel like it was the first movie I ever saw that like showed the life of an assassin like that. And I just remember as a kid being like, this is amazing. It's so much fun.
Like the anonymity of all of it, but then like you're well known in that assassin kind of underground world.
Yeah. It's like John Wick way before John Wick.
It's just such an incredible film. And I've always kind of beat myself up for never actually giving the movie the glory it deserves, because it's, god damn, it's so good.
It is so good. And one of the first movies the Wachowskis ever wrote, which is crazy. But I know that it got rewritten a lot, and they ended up not even wanting their names attached to it after the fact. So what you see is not necessarily what they made, but it's still crazy.
But it's still a great film. So sorry, Wachowskis.
Yeah, they made it. Whoever rewrote that made it incredible anyway. Okay. My number 9 is another one that I definitely didn't have on my previous action list, and not another one for me. I had Tango and Cash, but I didn't. You were talking about Assassins, and you didn't have that, so this is my crossover in that regard. We're both making up for things in that space. I didn't have this movie in my original list, and I am pretty sure I haven't had it on any list. And so I thought this is the perfect opportunity to make that better. It's one of the movies that I love. Whenever it's just like on TV or I'm scrolling past it, I'm like, yes, we're watching this because I know it's going to be a good time. I know I'm going to love every minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the reason why I can't, every time I have a question for somebody, I want to start it with pop quiz hot shot.
I almost put that on my list. I was so close to having it.
So my number 9 is Speed.
Hell yeah, it is.
Speed is fucking great because, like I said before, it is a little silly. I get it. Everybody thinks that the bus jump looks a little weird, and it does, but it doesn't matter because it's awesome, and the whole pace of the movie is it flows so flawlessly from the beginning before they start are trying to snatch Dennis Hopper or stop him from setting off his bombs. And the chemistry between Keanu Reeves and Jeff Daniels as partners is perfect and definitely sells that relationship and gets you invested in them, which is important for the story. And then seeing Sandra Bullock, I know I don't have to sell you on Sandra Bullock because you are in love with Sandra Bullock, but just her being in the movie and being kind of the audience's focal point.
Yeah.
If we were in her shoes and we were on a bus randomly one day that we probably should have missed and didn't, and end up getting put in this wild situation. It's just so incredible, and I've always loved it, and the action, and like I mentioned, the pace before, it continues to keep you invested the entire time. It's exciting the entire time. The music, and every time something goes wrong, you learn of something else, you feel like you went over a hurdle and you've discovered a solution, and then you realize, oh no, he's already thought of that too. And it's just a great one-upsmanship between the hero and villain throughout the story. So I don't know if anybody doesn't like Speed. If you do, you're crazy. It's such a good movie, so fun, and it holds up. It will always hold up, I think.
Yeah, when I hear people like dog Speed, I'm always thinking you clearly haven't actually watched the film, because Speed fucking rocks. It's so good. Oh man, yeah, it was on the list, and then it was off the list, and then it was on the list, and then it was off the list, and then when it was off the list, I replaced it with something else. So that's why it's not on the list. So.
Yeah, that's understandable. There's a lot to fit. It's like the widest genre ever. Every movie has action in it, it seems like. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly.
Yeah.
What is the best action movies?
Well, my number 9 was one that I don't think it was a big hit when it came out. I don't remember a lot of people watching it, but I remember watching it and just being like, holy shit, this was really good. I went into it kind of not expecting to enjoy it and ended up just absolutely loving it. I've always loved it. And it's one of those movies, it kind of ties back to our director's cut episode or the alternate ending kind of stuff. And this is one where the alternate ending is the best version of the film. It gives the most weight. It has the most impact. But my number 9 is from 2006, and it's a movie called 16 Blocks. It's with Bruce Willis and Mos Def. And it's Bruce Willis is like this old, just kind of given up on everything alcoholic cop who is tasked with taking a witness from a holding cell to the courthouse. And he has 16 blocks to get him there, and like an hour and a half or 2 hours to get him to the courthouse, and all hell breaks loose on the journey, essentially. And it was a shocking film to me when I watched it, because I went into it with very low expectations, and I came out with absolutely, oh, this is so much better than what I think it was marketed as, or as people kind of assumed it would be. It's just characters are just they're interesting characters. And Mos Def, he starts off as kind of annoying, but the more you learn about the dude and the more that he talks, which he talks a lot, the more you sympathize with him and you get where he's coming from, and you're on his side, and you see Bruce Willis's character kind of go from like having no hope or care to being forced to care to genuinely caring. It's just very interesting film, very cool film. It's not very silly. So I know, Jake, you were just saying action's best when it's silly, but 16 Blocks. It takes itself pretty serious. It's a cool movie, and it's one that I've always wished got the bigger audience or got the recognition that I've always felt it deserves. So I was excited to include it finally, because it was another one that I omitted for like 90% of adventure films, and I can't believe I did that on that first list. But so number 9 is 16 Blocks. It's so
that's
good.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember seeing it when it pretty soon after it came out in the early 2000s, because I was a pretty big Mos Def fan, which is maybe a weird sentence to say, but I was like, it was like at that point when I was like not listening to anything on the radio, like hip hop wise, but like finding the more Mos Def is an underground hip hop, but you know what I mean, non-mainstream. And I was like, oh, he looks great, and he's also a pretty darn good actor. You know, it's funny though, I didn't know Richard Donner directed 16 Blocks.
Yeah,
he directed Assassins as well.
That I didn't do that on purpose, but yeah.
He directed a lot of good shit. He directed Conspiracy Theory, which I love, and Lethal Weapon, which I love, and Scrooged and The Goonies, and he's amazing. So yeah, if you haven't seen 16 Blocks, highly recommend it for sure. Okay. My number 8 is one that in the early days of the podcast, there was almost nobody listening. And there's still less than a lot of people listening. There's slightly more than nobody listening. But we did get a couple of very good and interesting comments on our very first episode, I remember. And one has stuck out in my mind, and I imagine that it stuck out in your mind as well, that has made me regret not having it. And I've rewatched it many times since then, and I've kicked myself every time because I'm like, God, this movie is amazing. I should have had it on that list. So this is my chance to make up for it. My number 8 is The Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
Because I just remember seeing that and being like, shit, The Boondock Saints are so good. And also so formative, I think, it in my life at least.
It was huge for our generation.
Yeah, it was like, it was the movie that everybody watched when, not everybody, but I remember every group of friends that I knew that were all dudes, when you would like, after you had started driving and you would all hang out at each other's houses and you're like, we should watch The Boondock Saints because it's very mature and grown up and badass as hell. So I don't know if I'd say it's silly, but it's definitely weird in a lot of places. And William Dafoe is the main reason that it's weird in those places, because he plays, not the villain, but he's the cop or FBI investigator or whatever.
FBI investigator who listens to audio while he's doing his deductions on a crime scene.
Yeah, very, very, very strange or eccentric kind of personality, and investigates these two Irish brothers in a very interesting way, and the mayhem that they leave behind. So if you haven't seen or heard of Boondock Saints, you absolutely should. It's a really fun time. It's, I think, the quintessential St. Patrick's Day movie, right up there with The Departed. Because if you're gonna watch a movie on St. Patrick's Day, it has to be Irish and full of violence and full of liquor. And these Irish Catholic brothers who become vigilantes and decide to basically take out all of the criminals in town in the name of God, and basically become assassins. And they're just so badass. And so it's just always been one of those movies that, maybe because partly of nostalgia, but I think mostly because it kicks ass, it's so cool. There's so many scenes where I'm like, that scene is so, it's shot so well and it looks so cool and it looks so, it gets you like, it gets you fired up, you know. You're like watching the scene, you're like, that's awesome. Like it just gets your blood pumping, I guess. Makes you feel alive, and it's a very fun time.
Don't need rope, you asshole. That was another one that, through the many iterations of this list that I made, Boondock Saints was another that was off and on. I ultimately left it off because, end of the day, I had to have 16 blocks on my list because it deserves that love. But Boondock Saints, especially for our generation, deserves credit as being incredible because it is. And it's totally true. Like, once people started discovering it, you didn't go and hang out with your friends without them being like, dude, have you watched the Boondock Saints yet? And if you said, hell yeah, I did, the next answer was, well, we're watching it again.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way to answer that question and not end up watching
And not end up watching
Saints.
Boondock Saints. Everyone ended up watching Boondock Saints. Very cool movie. Very cool. Unfortunately, the sequel was kind of a giant letdown, but
yeah, expected more.
Apparently, they're making a third one now. Or
I feel like I saw something about that.
Yeah, getting ready to make a third one, so we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 8 is another one that is not very silly. Sorry, Jake.
That's fine.
Comes from 1998. Now, this was another challenge. I told myself your list can't be all 90s. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
Which was very difficult for me because 90s action, in my opinion, is like the quintessential 90s decade. That is 90s at its best. So instead of having like 10 movies from the 90s, I only have 5.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And this is one of them. This movie, when I saw this, my dad watched it before I did, and I remember seeing just a little clip of it because it's rated R, so I wasn't really supposed to see it yet. But I did that thing where I'll walk through the living room from my bedroom to like get a snack, and I'll like see the screen. And in my head, tell myself you're going to see the most badass scene of all time, which usually I don't know if you ever did this kind of sneaky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It take a little too long to get your glass of water.
Yeah, and usually you didn't see or hear anything cool.
Yeah, it's like the one scene in the movie where they're in an office the whole time.
And you're like, dang it. But that was not the case with this one. I caught a blip of one of the car chases in this one and was instantly just like, holy crap, that looks amazing. And my dad was cool enough to let me watch it. And it's just always stuck with me. Just the style that it's made, like filmed, the way the story is told, because it's very anti-answers. There's a lot of open-ended stuff, or they're just going to let you have to make assumptions, and the movie is completely okay with that. And I know that kind of drives people crazy most of the time. It even drives me nuts every now and again, but it works so well for this. But my number 8 is Ronin with Robert De Niro.
As soon as you said car chase, I was like, it has to be Ronin. It better be Ronin.
Because Ronin has one of the greatest car chases ever. It is fast paced. It is like you got your shootout going on. They're driving through oncoming traffic. The way the camera is mounted on the front of the vehicles and how they're swerving in and out. It's just everyone's seen a million car chases at this point. But the Ronin one, for some reason, will always just be like, this might be one of my all-time favorites because it's so cool. Yeah. But the violence in this one, it's not excessive. It's actually very quick and abrupt. And the gunshots sound different than most other action films with a lot of gunfire in it. They have more of like that pop realistic kind of sound to it instead of your normal Hollywood gunfire. It's such a unique film. You know, it takes
Hmm.
place in Paris, and you've got like this group of mercenaries trying to buy weapons, and they get mixed up with having to go and collect this mysterious case, and everyone's a villain. And I think that
Hmm.
might be my favorite part of the film is it's like there are no heroes in this movie. It's straight villain.
Hmm.
And it's just such a cool film. It's a hard one to really explain because, like
Yeah.
I said, there's really no answers, but it's a badass film. Badass film.
Yeah, I put my love for it up there with like Heat because it
Yeah.
seems the gunshot sounds and the action and the way it's done, the slowness, but then the bursts of action, it feels very much like Heat to me. Not just because it has Robert De Niro in it, but there's an overlap there, I think.
Yeah. It's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, and stellar cast: Jean Reno and
Huge cast,
Stellan
yeah.
Skarsgård and Sean Bean, and yeah, so cool. And that girl, I watched a movie recently where I was like, it had the girl from now I'm blanking on that movie about the guy that everybody's watching him, Truman Show. I had the girl from Truman Show, and I was like, "What is that girl from?" And then I remember she's in Ronin, also the girl that he like puts the magazine together and tries to remember.
Yeah.
Uh,
There
yeah,
was
I
like
don't
a
remember.
time where I can never remember her name, but I feel like there was that time in the late 90s she just seemed to pop up
Hmm.
like in movie like all the movies. I don't think that's true, but it just felt like you always recognized her when she
Yeah,
popped up.
yeah, she's been in a ton of stuff and is always very good in it. Okay. Well, you said something interesting there. You said that 90s is quintessential action, and I don't disagree. As a child born in the late 80s, 90s was extremely formative in my life. But I think some people might say 80s action is
That's
actually the
true.
best.
That's true. I won't argue it. 90s
I
is
think that
quintessential for
they're
me.
both right there. They're both at the
Yes.
top level. 80s and 90s combined, I think, are the best. And for that reason, that's my transition because mine is at an 80s, mid 80s action movie. My number 8 is I had a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies on my list. And I was like, I can't have all of them. And so I found myself with the very unfortunate decision to make between Terminator and Terminator 2 and Predator and the Mars one and
Total Recall.
Total Recall.
The
I kept
Mars
wanting to.
one.
For some reason, I thought Mars was in the title, and I was thinking of all the Mars titles I know. It's not Ghosts of Mars. It's not. So never. That's an insight in my weird brain. Yeah, Total Recall, Running Man, all of these great movies. He wasn't in any. I had to choose between those, and I decided after watching several of them in a row, my love for Commando may be unnatural, may
I
be
knew you were
unhuman.
going to say Commando.
Commando is special to me.
You
Like
just like him being jacked carrying the fucking tree trunk.
yeah, obviously that's a huge part of it. He's jacked in all those movies, but he's not. Commando is special because it's so different. Like there's the opening credits to Commando feel like you're watching a sitcom on like ABC or something because it's like him and his daughter and they're having a great time and they're eating ice cream and the text and the music and everything, it just looks so, I don't know, fun, and you're not even aware that he's about to start just killing so many men and with every way you can imagine. It's a very fun time, but it has probably, I think, Arnold Schwarzenegger is known for his comedic action one-liners, and I think that Commandos is primarily where that came from because Commando established it and perfected it at the same time. I think every kill he has, every one-liner, every quote is so perfect and quotable, and when it kills the guy on the plane, he's like, "No, he's dead tired." You know, it's like it's just so incredible. And And there, if you're a fan of like Predator was probably the next highest on my list that I almost had. I really wanted to have Predator on there, but then I was like, it's also kind of a sci-fi movie, so maybe I'll save it. But if you love Predator, you also have to love Bill Duke, the guy who like dry shaves with the razor in the forest. He is the first guy that you see in Commando, and he's just intimidating and scary, and killing off a bunch of Matrix's. That Matrix is the main character. Matrix's unit, and he is very scary and very cool. And so it is the jacked carrying the tree, but it's also the jacked putting on the gear and putting black stripes of paint all over his muscles and gearing up and going in and never reloading and shooting from the hip and just being badass the entire time, and just to be a good dad and save his girl. And he's just such a cool dude. And yeah, Commando is so awesome.
It is. It's never been my favorite of his, but it's very entertaining. It's one that I never like dog on because it's a blast. And so at my work, and there are times where I have to carry these really heavy like rolls of metal pipe. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna lie, every time, and I do this multiple times a day, I will throw that shit on my shoulder, and every time I walk it inside, first thing in my head is Commando of him carrying the fucking tree trunk. So clearly I don't have anything against that movie, because I picture it in my head every day I'm at work.
Yeah, I would just be like whistling the theme song the whole time while I'm doing it.
Well, some of us can't whistle, Jake.
Oh, we touched on a sore subject. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's been 30 years. I don't care.
How did I not know this about you?
I feel We're like you did. Things.
Maybe I did. I just forgot.
Yeah, Commando's great. Not my favorite of Arnold's, but Arnold is almost a genre unto himself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could put a top 10 Arnold action movie together, list together very quickly and very easily.
He's the dude, you know? He really is. So I can't dog that, but my instinct told me you were going to be the one to bring up. Of all of his movies, I was like, Jake's going with Commando. Like, Commando will show up today.
Yep. You know me too well.
I like it. Well, my number 7, you said 8, but I think you meant 7.
Did I?
I'm on number 7, which means you had to have been on 7.
No, your 10 was Assassins, your 9 was 16 Blocks, your 8 was Ronin, and now you're on 7.
Yeah, but you started the list.
Oh, did I say 8 a second ago?
Yeah.
Okay. Then yes, I'm at 7. You're right. We are on 7. I don't know what I said, but I know what we're on now. We're on 7.
Yeah. My number 7 definitely leans into the silly, but
now we're talking.
But not really realizing that it has leaned that far into the silly on a couple things. Okay. But that's what you get when you watch a John Woo 90s action movie. Is the action is like huge and grand and shit's blowing up everywhere, and that's usually where a little bit of the silliness kind of bleeds through, like unintentionally. This was another one of those. When I was a kid, I was adamant about watching this, and when I finally did get to see it, I had to watch the stupid TV edit version of it, and it totally was like a bummer, but I loved it anyways because it's just a cool film. But watching the actual cut of it, I was stoked, and I will forever defend this movie as one of the coolest movies ever made. Face Off is like, I would have put this way higher on my list, but the ones that are coming up have all just kind of like, they've built off of Face Off, and they are the ones that stick more. But Face Off is special to me. The action is awesome. It's got one-liners in it, but not the usual ones that you would expect from like an Arnold or a Stallone classic. It's very sarcastic one-liners, and to me, it might be Travolta and Cage's like best like just most entertaining performances ever. This is the movie that, to me, it was kind of crazy watching it and being like, holy crap, John Travolta is possibly one of the greatest villains of all time. He just might be. It's just, there's nothing wrong with this movie. Even on the shots where you can clearly see the stunt doubles that don't look anything like the actors that they're portraying. That's okay, because it's in the 90s and it's forgivable, because because the movie's awesome, so I forgive it. Okay.
You're just watching the action. You're like, I don't care who's doing it, I just want to see more of it.
It's just so cool. It's just, I love everyone in this movie. I love the way the story develops. I know John Woo has always said that he's considered it a straight sci-fi film, just with the whole idea of swapping faces and the prison that they hold these guys in. And I kind of see his point, but at the same time, it's a straight action film. The gunfights last forever.
Yeah, the premise is sci-fi, but that's about it.
And it's the one action movie that I don't judge the slow-mo doves flying across the screen. Like every other movie that has attempted that, I judge fairly harshly. I'm looking at you, Michael Bay. But for some reason in this one, it's like, nope, I'm okay with this. This works. It might be hypocritical, but I don't care. Face Off kicks ass. So that's my number 7.
It really is incredible. And Nicolas Cage and John Travolta are primarily the reason it's so incredible. They are great at acting unhinged and insane, and it's wild. It's so fun. Yeah, very cool movie. Okay, my number 6. I mentioned before, all the superhero movies were off the list. All the Bond movies were off the list. But I didn't say anything about Mission Impossible movies. And I know we did an episode about kind of catching you up on Mission Impossible and talked about them all. But I've never said exactly which is my favorite Mission Impossible movie. And it happens to not be probably the one that you think.
I feel like you did say which one is your favorite, though.
Did I? Well, maybe I did, but nobody listened to that episode. And they will after this, I'm sure. My favorite Mission Impossible movie and my number 6 pick is Rogue Nation.
Yeah, you did say that.
Okay, well, I didn't remember you didn't whistle, and I didn't remember that I said that, but let's just move on from it.
I'm just happy that you have a Mission Impossible installment, because it's like the best franchise ever. So.
It is, and I think it is so pivotal for action movies in general that of course we're going to have Stallone, of course we're going to have Arnold, of course we're going to have all of these greats, but you can't talk about action movies and doing your own stunts without talking about Tom Cruise. And you can't talk about Tom Cruise without talking about Mission Impossible, because he has defined the genre basically up to that point. So Mission Impossible on the whole is phenomenal, but Rogue Nation in particular I feel like is so special in the franchise because it kind of starts the continuous continuity of all of the movies. That the end of Ghost Protocol kind of sets up the next movie, but from then on, they're actually like connected, and the missions bleed into each other, and they make more sense. And the beginning of Rogue Nation is in particular my favorite part, when they actually establish the Syndicate and this whole other group of rogue spies that are trying to beat them and are doing a very good job of staying ahead of them the whole time. And it's just such an incredible movie, and introducing Ilsa Faust with Rebecca Ferguson, and it just feels like the Mission Impossible universe was here, and it was enjoyable, and it was fun, and it was great. And this movie just makes it like explode. Like
Right.
it's just a huge monumental thing now, and it sets up Fallout, and it does all of these great things. So Rogue Nation, I felt like is the best, is my favorite.
I respect just the fact that you have one of the Mission Impossible films on your list, Jake. I think everyone who knows me, whether from the show or in everyday life, knows how much I love the whole franchise. Because I really, really fucking love the whole franchise. But Rogue Nation is, you and I talked about like MI3 really kind of like started setting the bar higher and kind of, this is a direction we can take this character and these missions.
Made people pay attention and take it seriously.
Yeah, and Ghost Protocol followed suit on that one, and Ghost Protocol has some badass stuff in it. But Rogue Nation, I agree, to a point. Rogue Nation is fantastic just because the Syndicate is finally like introduced into this world, and they're formidable. And it's just following it up with like Fallout, and then even going into Dead Reckoning. I can't wait to see what Dead Reckoning Part 2, or did they rename it? I think they renamed it. But
they renamed Dead Reckoning Part 1 to just Dead Reckoning. We don't have a name for the second one yet.
Okay.
So it seems to be that they will rename it.
Yeah. But I love that franchise. And yes, you can't have a top 10 action and not talk about stunts and not talk about Tom Cruise being like, you know what could be cool? I'm going to climb the world's tallest building and slip off of it. Or I'm going to...
Or even just small things like in Rogue Nation, he's just attached to that pipe and he just like pulls himself
The greatest...
up.
The most like underrated fight escape scene ever. I still am baffled people don't talk about this more, because he flips his body upside down and it vertically pops himself off of the pipe. It's that kind of core work is inhuman. So
very impressive strength for sure. It's amazing, and it's like every time I think about a scene, I'm like, oh, that scene is my favorite, like the opera scene or whatever. But then I'm like, no, where he dies and he's drowned and all that stuff, and then he wakes up and he's like barely conscious, and he goes in a car chase, and then he crashes, and he gets a motorcycle, and he goes on a motorcycle chase, and he's going so fast, and it looks so real and so exciting. The whole movie's like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's true. That's a fantastic pick, Jake. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
All right. So my number 6, I might be pulling a U. And when I say I might be pulling a U, I mean I'm straight up pulling a U. Because you have this tendency where you'll be like, not just one movie, but I'm going to call the whole franchise as this pick.
I never do that.
You totally have. About. You did it with John Wick. You've done it.
Okay.
So I'm pulling a U, and if you need me to actually pick one, I have one on the ready. But I'm going to say the whole series, or the 4 main movies, because the spin-off doesn't count.
Okay.
But this franchise, or these series of movies, are just so cool. I love the fight scenes, and I know the fight scenes get a lot of flack because the camera is like right up in the middle, and it's so fast-paced, and it's so chaotic and in close quarters that a lot of people felt like the fight scenes were a little, too much, and you can't see what's going on. I disagree. I think the way the fight scenes were filmed are exactly how they needed to be filmed, and I think they add intensity to the story. And I also just think the story itself is fucking cool, and I love the books that the series is based on. The movies, although differ from the books quite a bit, it's still awesome, and I think they do it in a really good way. But the Bourne series, Identity, Supremacy, and Ultimatum, and then Jason Bourne, the 4th one, God, God damn, I love these movies so much, dude. I love the music in them. I mean, they are fast paced, and when they really kick
Hmm.
off, they go. And it's so much fun to watch, and it's so exciting. And the crazy stunt work that's in that franchise as well is just insane. And it's just, I remember watching the first one when it came out in 2002 and just being like, yeah, it was cool. But then the more I thought, I was like, no, that movie was, I really liked it.
Hmm.
And then I saw Supremacy and was like, I don't really care for Supremacy that first time. And then I rewatched it and was like, I'm an idiot. Supremacy is amazing. And Ultimatum's just badass, even if Matt Damon hates it. You're crazy, Matt Damon. Ultimatum rocks. And
Yeah.
Jason Bourne, when he came back into the franchise to finish it off with Jason Bourne, that one I think is severely underrated. It is a cool fucking movie. And I think the way Paul Greengrass filmed it and Matt Damon, the way he plays Jason Bourne, and just that whole world of the CIA trying to bring in the spy under false pretense. Well, some of them under false pretense, and then the way
Yeah.
that everything is revealed is just so cool. I adore this franchise so much. So I had to have it on the list. It's another one that I've always kind of been very disappointed in myself for not including when we did the
Yeah.
very first episode, because the Bourne series, it's that series kind of like Mission Impossible for me, where I can just go back to it if I'm having a hard time picking something. It's one that I can always just be like, well, there's 4 movies that I can just knock out and I'll enjoy every second of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I my only complaint is the I think it's particularly the second one, Supremacy. I do feel that way about the fighting. That there were
Yeah.
moments where I was like, "What the fuck is happening? Who is that? Who is who? Who's winning?" I don't really understand, but I forgive it a lot, and I don't mind it. I remember seeing the original one, and I just blew my mind. I was like, it also was like at that perfect time where I was like into these really interesting and deep action movies that where you don't really know what's going on or who's who or what this means. And the transporter was kind of like that as well, kind of the same vibe, I feel like. But the first Bourne movie where he like has lost his memory and is trying to figure it out and realizes, oh shit, I'm actually part of a super secret spy agency and know all of these sick moves to kill people with my hands. Yeah, very exciting and very, very cool.
Yeah, they're just so good. They're just, God damn it.
Which one is your favorite if you have
So-
to choose one? I'm not going to make you because I'm not a monster, but if you had to.
Honestly, over the years, Supremacy has become my favorite in the franchise. I think it's just the most intense. I think it's the one that the stakes are the highest. It helps that Jason's motivation is amped up from just survival, but now it's like retribution that he's seeking.
Yeah.
I just think I think it's the most intense out of the franchise, and it's really
Okay.
the more that I've watched it and really like learned the ins and outs of where the story goes and what it hints at and all that, it's just it becomes so cool and mind-blowing just how big his story actually, like the character of Jason Bourne, how big his story really is. Yeah, so Supremacy is my preferred, which I have come to laugh because that was the one that I was like, oh, I don't really care for this one the first time I saw it, and now it's like, no, that one's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely get appreciating that he's kind of at his peak performance. He's definitely inhibited a lot in the first one. It's like a lot of people say that Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars, but a lot of people also like Return of the Jedi because you actually see Luke actually full power
Right.
and able to actually get his vengeance on stuff, and that's kind of the same with Jason Bourne, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 5 is possibly the peak of my theme, which is jacked dudes. They're the most jacked dudes. It's basically a film about jacked dudes being jacked.
Swear to God, if you call Over the Top, I'm gonna smack you.
Well,
Oh no!
let's take a slight detour into over the top and talk about how jacked you have to be a truck driver who goes around arm wrestling people in a worldwide competition. No, it's not over the top, but I do love that movie. My number 5 is partly realistic and sincere jackedness and partially CGI jackedness, because my number 5 is 300.
Okay.
Where everyone is topless and ripped, and it's such a awesome movie. Like, this is my problem talking about action movies. I'm like, everyone I would just want to be like, it's such a fucking awesome movie, dude.
Because it is fucking awesome. No, 300.
And that's all
is fucking awesome.
It's all it takes. But yeah, 300 is kind of on that next level, and I think is perfect Zack Snyder-ness. Everybody that complains about Zack Snyder and complains about his slow-mo, for the most part, they don't complain about 300 because it works so perfectly and it's integrated so flawlessly that the slow-mo and the effects and the color palette and it's the only comic book quote-unquote movie on my list. All I did, like you, also took all of the other ones out, but I was like, 300 though doesn't really count as a comic book movie. It has to be on my list because it's so cool, and I love the story, and I love the motivations of Leonidas, and historical accurate or not, who cares? The movie itself is telling the story of these King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, and fighting against the Persian King Xerxes and resisting the largest force that the world has ever seen as just a small 300-man unit in a small canyon. And it's so cool, and the mysticism and the weird parts of it are gross, but also you like that it's gross because you're like, I don't know, it just feels
it fits that world.
Yeah, it feels accurate. Yeah, 100%. And so it's perfect and inspiring, and I don't know. It's the same kind of movie that I just get goosebumps every time I watch it. It's so exciting.
Yeah, I remember when it came out, I had kind of like a back and forth on if I actually wanted to see it. And then it had so much hype that I was married at the time, and my wife and I were like, let's just go see this. Let's see what all the hype is. And I remember like sitting in the theater, kind of expecting to not really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But then he kicked the dude into the pit.
Yeah.
And the slow-mo of him going in the pit and then seeing the other messengers being driven to like jump or be shoved into it, I was just like, oh no, this is cool. This is really, really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yes, 300 is fucking awesome. I wanted to like, I had thought about, oh dude, I should totally get I should show 300 to my kid because she would love the action. She would think this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I rewatched it and was like, I don't know why, but I completely forget how much nudity is actually in that movie. There is a lot of nudity.
Yeah, I'm always like, I feel like there was some, and then I'm like, no, there's a really long sex scene with his wife, and there's like virgins or some mystical thing, like sacrifices,
like hard nipples, and
there's a lot going on there.
And then when you're in like Xerxes' orgy room, it's like
he's full of orgies, and then that deformed little guy is getting all in there, and
it's like, all right, maybe I won't show her this movie. It totally is a comic book movie, though, Jake. It's based on Miller's 300. But I had my rule against myself to not have a comic book. And if you're going to have a comic book movie, that's not the usual that you and I would probably have. 300 is the one to have.
Yeah.
And Gerard Butler is like peak badass in that film.
Yeah, he truly is. He's perfect.
What a bat! Oh, that's so cool. All right. Well, my number 5, I debated because the amount of action is not very high,
Okay.
but I have it on my list, especially this high, because when the action does show up, it
Hmm.
it's pretty incredible, and
I
it's
had a lot like that. I was like, do I or don't I? It was so
so,
hard.
and it's one that just, you hear like this movie people love. And I'm like, yeah, because it's so well written, it's so well made and well acted.
Hmm.
And I still feel like it's not loved like it deserves, but I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel. Um, but The Accountant
Yeah.
is my number 5. That is That's that movie, dude, where every time I rewatch it, I am just more and more in awe of the story and just fall
Hmm.
more and more in love with it. It is what a movie. Anna Kendrick is so great in it. She's like, this is a perfect film for her, and her up against Ben Affleck, who's playing like the autistic guy who's
It's
this
one of my
account.
favorite Ben Affleck movies.
Yeah, it's so good. And when the action hits, it's like the fight scenes are so well choreographed and they're so quick and brutal
Hmm.
that although there's not a lot of action, the
Yeah.
brutality of the action, I think, makes it feel like the movie is just jam packed with it throughout the whole thing. But it's
Hmm.
just so cool. But my favorite thing about it, favorite thing, there's no love story.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a smart decision to make sure that his motivations are not driven by love. They're just
Hmm.
driven by, like, he just feels I have to protect her. And that's
Hmm.
where it ends. And I think action has a tendency through the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and early 2000s had this kind of unwritten rule
Hmm.
where your lead actor was going to fall in love with the lead actress, even though they
Yeah.
may have hated each other the whole time or just no real interaction. They're going
Hmm.
to, like, we're going to throw a love aspect into it. And the accountant kind of teases it and then is like, nope,
Yeah.
that's not a factor in this story. And I think it's the smartest decision the movie makes. But this is also my favorite John Barenthal role because
Yeah.
I'll be honest, folks, and don't at me. After Walking Dead, I was not the biggest fan of his. I thought he was
Yeah.
pretty obnoxious on that show. Um, he's done great roles since then, and I think this is my favorite of his. So
Hmm.
The Accountant is just, it's an intense story through the flashbacks of his childhood and how he's raised to like where he's at now, being this assassin or this hitman who happens to also cook the books. He's just, what a
Hmm.
film. It's so good.
Yeah. I feel like severely underrated that it's so incredibly good. Everybody's great in it. And J.K. Simmons as well. They're all so good in it. It's such a good time.
It really is. John Lithgow, like, he's great in it.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just, there's not one poor moment of this whole film. It is intriguing from the opening scene all the way
Hmm.
till the final, image. It's just, what a great fucking movie. And it's, every time I'm like, I feel like I'm going to watch The Accountant, I find myself right when I hit play getting
Hmm.
giddy and just being like,
Hmm.
yes, yes.
Yeah, it's such an interesting movie. I feel like just rewatching the trailer while you were talking, I was because it's been a minute since I saw it. I'm like, yeah, there's so much depth to every little thing that he does in his
Mhm.
performance as this autistic accountant guy, and it's so interesting. I love that movie. I also didn't realize that it's connected to Warrior, which I love, the UFC fight movie with
Mhm.
Tom Hardy, and The Way Back, which is a movie that you love, the basketball director movie. Same director, Gavin O'Connor,
Oh,
did all three of those,
all
which is
right.
so interesting. Okay, the counting. Yes, very cool. My number 4. Okay, you said before something that hurt my feelings. You said that I often choose movies that break the rules and choose whole series of
I
movies.
didn't say you always did. I said you have done it before.
Well, I got defensive because I was lashing out,
Because you're
but
doing
I
it right now.
kind of doing it right now. Not really. I'm not really doing it right now because there is a release that is these two things combined into one feature film. And so my number 4 is Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Because I can't choose between Kill Bill 1 and Kill Bill 2. And so I felt like this made the most sense to do. And there's a single like copy of a film I can point to and say this is the one that is my number 4.
Oh, I
So-
consider it one story. I don't
Okay.
consider it the sequel. It's one story.
Yeah. So yeah, Kill Bill in general is, I mean, I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. I put him in my top 3 directors of all time, writer directors especially. But of all of his movies, I think Kill Bill for an action movie and the homages that it has and the references to Bruce Lee in The Game of Death and all of its obvious Japanese influences and Lady Snowblood and all of that stuff. The anime sequences. I have never watched an anime movie that I love, but if Quentin Tarantino made one, I would probably love it because the anime sequences, the flashbacks of Lucy Liu's character, Oren Ishii, I'm like, this is fantastic. I would watch a whole movie based on this. Absolutely, I would. So maybe that should be his next movie since he's not doing the critic or whatever it's called, movie critic. He should just do an anime movie, and I would be down with that. But I think it does all of the like not like tropes, but I think key things that you need in a great action movie, especially a great revenge movie, which is having the main character, the bride, be deeply and significantly wronged by this villain and needing to take it out on his entire organization and her past coworkers and whatnot. And so obviously she knows them. She knows all of their ticks and moves and gimmicks and what have you. And it just makes it for such an interesting interaction as she goes back and kind of goes on this road to take all of that back and extract vengeance from all of them. It is so satisfying every single time that she interacts with somebody from her past and gets more and more hurt and more affected by it and gets closer to her success, but also there's more and more at stake where it feels like she's more and more beaten down. So it's harder for her to achieve that vengeance. It's just so exciting. And I love how it's shot and I love the excitement and watching them back to back or watching the whole bloody affair as a single film. Is just perfect. And it's so incredible. I think it's up there as one of his best for sure. So it was the only one I was like, how many like kung fu or Eastern influenced movies do I have versus how many like American 80s action movies or things like that? Like they was trying to find a balance and I felt like this one rose to the top as needing to be on the list.
No, Kill Bill is amazing. I feel like we talked about it pretty extensively, obviously in our Quentin Tarantino episode from back in the day and also our top 10 femme fatales.
Yeah.
Because I think we both had Oren Ishii on there, or you did.
I think we both did. It was like definitely one of our crossovers because we loved her so much.
Kill Bill is such a badass film. It's so cool. It's funny because it has its silly moments, but man, the bride gets put through the ringer throughout that story. Oh. All right. Great pick, Jake. Great pick. All right. Well, you brought up a later installment of this franchise, and it will come as no surprise that I am going to go with the OG
Yeah.
because it's just the one that I remember as a kid running around the house pretending to be Ethan Hunt and wanting to do the drop down into the CIA room, you know. But the first
Mhm.
Mission Impossible is my number 4. It's
Yeah.
still the rest of the franchise is amazing and they just keep getting better. But that first Mission Impossible is special to me. It might be nostalgia, but it's just such a cool spy movie
Mhm.
all the way through. It's just the whole setup. I love the starting, you know, with Phelps watching his mission get told to him on the little video on the plane, him lighting the cigarette to blow the smoke to like mix in with the self-destructive message.
Mhm.
It's just so cool seeing like and as a kid seeing the world of spies really get opened up like that. That's just special. And
Yeah.
yeah, you want it. I wanted to be the action star Tom Cruise back then, not Tom Cruise.
Not real life Tom Cruise.
No, but Ethan Hunt, he's still one of my favorite heroes ever. He's just so cool. But
Mhm.
yeah, that first Mission Impossible is always going to have a soft spot for me. I think it's just one of the most exciting films to this day. And I'm glad
Mhm.
that it kind of feels dated because it does take place in 96. But it's
Yeah.
cool to see where it started to where it is now because all the technology that you see now makes sense that it would have all come from like their beginnings in that first one in 96. So I love how they've actually kind of
Yeah.
been so detail oriented to make sure technology always makes sense and progressed as you would expect it to. So, but that
Yeah.
first one is just,
Natural.
it's so cool. It's so cool. The as he's figuring out the mysteries and as he's like piecing everything together, playing Max to get his own
Mhm.
agenda, having to be the mole essentially.
Mhm.
Like it's so exciting. I fucking love that first Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I know you do. It's one of the like maybe 2 movies I was like, he'll absolutely have
Oh,
those on his
100%.
list. There's no way. He talks about it all the time. Yeah, it's so good and holds up so well.
It really does.
My number 3 is a movie I debated pretty heavily leaving off because it's definitely one we've talked about before, but it's a movie that I've only ever had on my original top 10 action list. We've had the sequel on other lists, but the first one, at least I didn't include. So I was like, I need to make sure it's on the list, at least now. And then going forward, we can always refer back to it. And it is also one of the top 3 greatest action movies of all time because I mean, it's not terribly old, but it is changed kind of how action movies were done
Mm-hmm.
and changed everybody's perspective of action movies and fight scenes and how fight scenes could be filmed and how fight performers could actually perform them in a way that is believable and not silly and not edited silly and all that stuff. So it's just transformed movies for the better, I think, and also holds up on its own. And anybody who hasn't seen it can go watch it now and be blown away by it.
Yeah.
So my number 3 is The Raid Redemption,
All right.
which I'm sure is no surprise to you because it's such an absolutely incredible movie.
Yeah.
And the Raid, the first Raid, sometimes you call it The Raid, sometimes you call it The Raid Redemption. I always call it The Raid Redemption because that's what I first saw it as. And I kind of like that it sounds like a sequel, even though it's the first movie. I think it's fun and interesting and silly. But The Raid is the kind of movie that the action is the focal point, and the way
Mm-hmm.
Gareth Evans wrote and directed the whole movie to kind of just focus on this one guy who is a cop and has a wife and a baby and wants to kind of just go to work and come home safely. for him to have the worst day ever and go to this
Understatement of the year.
to be put in on this raid of this apartment complex, and every single room he goes to, every single floor he goes to, they're just the baddest dudes on the planet trying to stop him and kill him, and his whole unit. He's on a team with a bunch of other cops, but for some reason he has I think the determination, because of the life he has and needing to get back home. He has the determination to survive it and get through it and get to the top. And so it's an unbelievable movie. There are shots and things that happen in it that you will say, how did they do that? And did they really do that? Or how, like, I can't even imagine a human being able to do that. Even having seen as many movies as I have, and seeing seeing Jackie Chan do incredible stunts his whole life and all this stuff, I'm like, there's so many things. I'm like, I can't believe you did that. And then you watch interviews with Gareth Evans, and he's like, yeah, we did that, and it took 5 days, and
Right.
all of these people got injured, but we committed to it and we did it, and it was incredible, and it pays off. It's such a huge testament to their efforts that the movie is so incredibly good. So The Raid is always one of those movies that I feel like it's gotten a little bit more out there as far as people having heard about it, but it's also still not as well known as it should be. So if you haven't seen The Raid, you must see The Raid. It's so cool.
To this day, even knowing the whole film, 1 and 2, so both films, knowing them very well, it's still one of the most intense movie experiences you'll ever have. If anyone ever watches it and is like, it wasn't that intense, like, you didn't watch it. That's just a fact.
You're not paying attention.
You're not paying attention. You didn't watch the movie. The Raid is incredible. It's such a mind-blowing film. From all the action sequence, and the story itself is really cool. It reminds me of like Training Day, but on, speed. So
yeah, so intense and kinetic the entire time.
Yeah, not shocked you have that on your list. And I do feel like you and I talk about that one fairly regularly.
Yeah. It was like, do we need to talk about The Raid again? But also, it's a top 10 action list, and so I can't have a top 10 action list and not list one of the best movies ever made in the action genre.
That was one of those. The only reason I didn't put that one on this list was because I had it on another list. Yeah. All right. Well, my number 3 is one I know I have talked about a handful of times. It's one that I will preach forever, that it deserves a sequel that it will never get. But that doesn't change my thoughts on it. I just think this is one of the most fun, suave action films I think they've really ever made. It's just such a joy to watch every time. But The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is just, God damn it. I smiled.
When you said suave, for some reason, I was like, wasn't even thinking of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And then you said suave. I'm like, oh, he must be talking about The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yes. It's just, from the get-go, this movie is a blast. Guy Ritchie knew exactly what he needed to pull off, and having Henry Cavill support that and see the same vision, it works so perfectly. And I never not smile throughout this film.
Yeah, so enjoyable.
It's so enjoyable. That's why it's so high on my list, because it's just one of those movies where the action is so cool. It's Guy Ritchie style action. It's a blast. But the movie as a whole is just enjoyable. You smile the whole time. You're having a good time. You feel good the whole time. It's just, you don't get a lot of, in particular, action movies that will do that. But this is one of them. And it's just, God damn, I really love the Man from Uncle.
I know exactly what you mean.
I it's just a shame that Army Hammer turned out to be such a like piece of shit. But I think
Is he? What did he do?
oh dude. So he's one of those guys that was kind of exposed during the Me Too movement,
Oh,
but like real bad. Yeah,
oh,
he's a real
I
piece of
missed
shit.
that.
Yeah, he's a real
Oh,
piece of shit. That's why you don't see
that's
him anymore.
that makes more
Yeah,
sense. Yeah,
yeah,
because he was kind of on an upward trajectory.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
that sucks. Fuck him, but whatever.
right, fuck him. But I feel like you could still do a sequel, recast his role, and people would
Yeah,
be totally okay with it. But the Man
yeah, and he
from
was
Uncle is just
more of the straight man anyway as the KGB agent. It's an interesting premise to see like in the middle of the Cold War have a
yeah,
CIA agent and a KGB agent like forced to work together, and they do such a good job of kind of selling that. And you see the pros and cons of both sides. Like this side is way more high tech and free with
right.
information and all that stuff, and this way is way more old fashioned. And but there's times when you need old fashioned and the tech
Yeah,
fails you, and they play it so well with each other.
it's just it's so good, so enjoyable. I think more people. It deserves a massive audience, and it's one I will always advocate for. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I completely support that. My number two is a movie that is maybe a little more appropriate now more than ever because the prequel just is about to come out or just came out recently. My number two is Mad Max Fury Road. Yeah. Fury Road is one of those kind of extremely special movies, and the action in it is so fantastic and intense from the very opening scene when you just see the back of Tom Hardy's character Max, and then it just kind of goes for half the movie, and
yeah,
then they end up driving to a spot, and then they stop and it's quiet for a second, and then they decide to drive back, and it's the action the entire rest of the
yeah,
movie. And it's so cool and visually the most incredible and impressive movies not only that Frank Miller's ever done, but that I've ever seen, for sure. George Miller, sorry, that I've ever seen. He's just so incredible with the visual style. And it's also so bizarre that this old dude, he's the oldest fucking guy, is this incredible action writer, director, like creator,
yeah,
and that he's making Furiosa now, and he's almost 80 years old, and he's going to make the next Mad Max movie after that already. It's in production, and can't believe that he's so old and such like an action icon. It's
yeah.
so cool.
See, the Mad Max saga, as it's now known from Road Warrior to now,
Yeah.
it's such a unique movie experience because it's so dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a dirty franchise because, and I don't mean like perverted dirty, but it's just you literally can feel the dirt on you when you watch any of these movies. But that's a positive. I think that's such a cool thing that he's able to pull this stuff off. But yeah, Fury Road is.
It sells you on the futuristic post-apocalyptic world, for sure.
It's definitely an experience for sure. I am very excited for Furiosa. I was a little hesitant at first, but the more I see the trailers and the more I just like am buying into Anna Taylor-Joy being Furiosa, the more I'm like, yeah. I'm for this. I'm so for this. But yeah, Fury Road is. Whew.
Yeah, it's unbelievably cool, and it just kind of like bleeds cool out of its pores. It's so awesome. It's fun to see the whole saga and kind of see how it grew up. Mm-hmm. And I feel like George Miller kind of just found his voice throughout. Like it started very early on, very independent, very low budget and all that stuff. And then he finally gets to the point where he's like, I can do and make whatever I want, and I can translate the images and feelings in my mind on screen, and the things that he comes up with and shows are mind-blowingly cool.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the kind of movie that I remember seeing in the theater. I wish I could see it in the theater like every year because it's so visually incredible and the sound and everything is so amazing. And I it's the kind of movie that I love so much. Like I love every version of it. There's a black and white version of it, which is also so cool. And you pick up on different things. Like you pick up on having it in black and white, you pick up on the lighting and stuff and the big tornado storm that happens and stuff. It just looks so cool and so different. And you kind of respect other things that you may have not even noticed before, just by changing the color palette. So,
well, and I love
Fury
that,
Road. Amazing.
Wasn't it his wife edited the film?
Yeah, I think that's true.
She had like never done anything like that because he wanted someone a whole different like perspective on the editing style, and it was like the greatest decision ever made. Yeah, Fury Road is badass through and through. All right,
it's very, very true.
My number 2, Jake, I think this will be the one you're most proud of me having on this list. It should not be any surprise considering... Now, I didn't do the whole franchise because I already did that with one pick, so I was like, I feel like I can only do it with one.
Yeah. Stop breaking the rules.
If we make them, we can do it. But as much as I love the entire franchise, this is another one kind of like Mission Impossible, where that first one is just so special because you know where it, you know that it's the launching pad. You know that it was done so well that it took audiences off guard. It took all of us off guard. But that first John Wick is just, whew.
Mm-hmm.
It's so well made, and it's just, it's just like that first Mission Impossible to me, where it was like, this is exciting. This makes me, if I was a kid watching this, I would be walking around telling my folks, like, I need an all black suit. I need all the fake guns you can get me.
I'm growing out my hair right now.
Right. Long hair. Like,
yeah.
That first John Wick is just, it's so unique in action because it definitely, I think it kind of regrounded action as a genre, where it went back to some kind of like action roots, but it also started showing you some cool things that you could do, and leave it to Keanu Reeves to once again be like, yeah, action's cool, but watch me redefine it once again. And you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. How many people have defined like action once in their life, and to come off of the Matrix and then get to do it again and have everybody take notice? It's an unbelievable thing.
Unbelievable.
But it speaks to his work ethic.
It does. And actually having John Wick on this list is why I didn't put Speed on the list, because I was like, well, I feel like I shouldn't have 2 Keanu Reeves films on the same list. So, but yeah, John Wick is just, it's a special one. And even though I love 2, 3, and 4, I think they just get better. But that first one is just like, man, you can watch this one on its own. And when it ends, you are just like, ooh, I feel pumped. You feel just like, hell yeah, that was incredible. Like, it's just, what a badass film. I still can't believe it came out in 2014. I can't believe it's a 10-year-old franchise.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah, I feel that way too. It feels like, I mean, part of me feels that way, and then part of me feels like, oh, John Wick came out in the early 2000s because it changed everything that came out after it. and like, no, it's actually only 2014. That's pretty, not that long ago. But I completely agree with you. It's a reason why it's part of my number 1.
There it is.
I did.
You hurt my feelings, Dustin. You hurt my feelings.
Because there was so much truth in it, and you called me out before I even got to expose myself. Don't make that a clip to put on the internet. Movie boners expose themselves. Yes, I do have John Wick on my list as well. but I really can't choose between the whole franchise, and so I put the whole franchise as my number one
Yeah.
because it's the most consistent, the most incredible franchises that we have. I think probably have ever seen. Everybody loves it, and it did start out so small with the
Mhm.
first one that nobody really expected it, and in the early 2010s, action was kind of boring and had gotten very stale, and all the big action movies were like superhero movies, you know.
Mhm.
But John Wick come out and everybody's like, have you heard of this movie that nobody's heard about? And we it just kind of had this word of mouth snowball effect, and everybody's like, this movie's unbelievably exciting and cool, and it's the first movie directed by, like, the first movie that everybody's really taken notice of that focused on stunts and was directed by two stuntmen. And everybody knows Chad Stahelski, who continued to make it, but David, was it Leitch, who just
Mhm.
did The Fall Guy? He also co-directed on it as well, and they were both have stuntman backgrounds, and so it was very clear that there was a respect and a love letter to that art within this movie,
Yeah.
in addition to just making a badass movie. And then building on that with creating an initial very interesting lore, kind of the world of Assassins. We talked about the movie Assassins and kind of how that initially exposed it. This kind of does a similar sort of thing, but then it kind of adds more mythology to it, adds more just old worldness to
Mhm.
it, that there's this some old mystical, like it's Freemasonry or whatever, like there's just this conspiracy aspect to it. And then every movie after that builds on it in such a good way. They don't ever take it too far where it's like loses the plot, but they also don't do the same thing either. Like they
Mhm.
didn't just redo the same thing with some different scenes or different choreography. Every movie is different and building on itself and taking the character of John Wick on this wild ride. And it's so cool, and the whole cast is so cool. It's one of those things that I could just if I could take one franchise to a desert island, it would probably be the John Wick franchise because I love all of them completely. There's no bad apples, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of them.
That is true. Those are facts. Those are facts. Yeah. Not shocked you did that. I'm still gonna make fun of you for the. You said something earlier that hurt my feelings.
It's yeah, you just know me so well, and I didn't know that you can't whistle. So
See, you're like, I like that. That's what you're fixating on.
it's I'm gonna write it in my journal. Dear diary, today I learned that Dustin can't whistle, and I don't want to ever forget that. So I can bring it up again at some point in the future.
That's fair. Okay. Okay. All right. My number one. Well, I went full nostalgia on this.
Love it.
Yep. Yep. If you noticed, I just went 9 movies without mentioning a certain name. And I'm sure some
Mhm.
people are like, what the fuck? Considering I, in one of our debate episodes, I was the one debating his career against yours.
Okay.
And I think it was unanimous by the end that I won because I've won both debate episodes.
That's
Um,
I don't know that that's true, but that's not the
yes,
point.
I did, Jake. Yes, I did. It's so impossible for me. And this is actually what made making this list so impossible for me because
Yeah.
I learned a hard truth.
Mhm.
I cannot pick an Arnold Schwarzenegger film.
Yeah.
I wanted T2 and then it was like, but that's more sci-fi.
Mm.
Like your dilemma. And I was like, well, I could do first Terminator. Again, it's straight sci-fi. And I'm like, well, I could do Total Recall. That's sci-fi action. I'm like, fuck. I do Commando. That's straight action. Yeah,
Yep.
but would that actually be your favorite? I'm like, oh, then there's Running Man, and Running Man is just so much fun and
Yeah.
so ridiculous with the costumes and all that. Like the Opera Man cracks me up every time.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for me to pick an Arnold film. It's so difficult. And then I had to simplify it. It was like, you know what? You need to pick the one that is all encompassing to his career, super nostalgia for you, and is loaded with the action, the ridiculous action, and the ridiculous one-liners.
It's about an action hero.
It might be about the last action hero.
Yeah,
yes.
It defines the genre as a single movie.
It really does. It defines Schwarzenegger's career. It's just he pokes fun at himself throughout the film, which is I have so much respect for these actors and actresses that can do that, where they can poke fun at their shticks, and have fun with it.
Known for.
Yeah, there's just something special about this movie. Every time I watch it, not only does it seem to put me back in that kind of mentality of just enjoying the movie, but it's as an adult watching Schwarzenegger spoof himself.
Yeah.
Is like, this is fantastic. My favorite line in the whole movie is when they're in the real world and Arnold is being interviewed about the violence in the film. And he's like, well, in the previous movie, we killed 100 dudes. And in this one, we only kill 80. So see, we're really toning it down. And you're like, that's the most ridiculous argument ever. But Last Action Hero is just, it really does to me. It just takes the genre, it takes Arnold's career, and it just lumps all of it into the one film. And it's like, if you're not a big action fan or whatever, or haven't really exposed to action, you could pop this one in and you'll get it. I think that's what's great about it. And it's just such a joy. I fucking love Last Action Hero. And it helps that the soundtrack is pretty killer too. You've got Megadeth, you've got Alice in Chains. It's just such a cool soundtrack. But yeah, Last Action Hero is going to be my number one.
It's a perfect choice, and I think it's a perfect topper to the top 10 action list. It's like the Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory movie for movie fans, especially action movie fans, and especially watching this movie for us, I think it is extremely nostalgic. You see this young kid go to the movies and get a magical golden ticket and get sucked into the movie. So you see everything through his eyes. And I think it just takes you back to being a kid and seeing these action movies and how incredible they are through your own eyes. And now you put yourself in his shoes and he's there with Arnold Schwarzenegger and he's saying these lines, and it's a perfect movie. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's just, and it's chock full of one-liners. There's so many one-liners in this movie. But I think one of the best little things, inside joke that they do is Danny DeVito does the voice of the cartoon Detective Cat. I don't know why I love that so much, but I do. Yeah, I love that one. I also love when he goes to the video rental store and all of the action posters are Sylvester Stallone in the Terminator. Yeah. And he's like, well, that's weird. Why is that? And he's he's awesome in that movie. I'm a huge fan. And you're like, that was when you guys were feuding. This is great. Yeah, it's brilliant. So there you go. There you go. Top 10 action finally caught up and off the list. Yep. That was a weight off for sure. That was difficult to come down with. That was a very difficult list to make. I could not believe how challenging that list ended up being. It's this was one, dude. I started prepping for this one when we first were we should do our top 10 action again. I was like, oh, hell yeah. It's been 3 or 4 months. It's been a long time. And it's just been, I have gone through so many different lists. It's been overwhelming. Then trying to figure out, well, I'm going to have Arnold. He's my action hero. I can't pick. I just can't pick. Yeah, that's incredibly difficult. Were you able to narrow it down to some honorable mentions? Oh yeah. And I kept the honorable mentions pretty short. Lethal Weapon
That
Yeah.
first one is it's classic. My favorite scene is the jumper. It's just I
Yeah.
love Mel Gibson in that role. Him as Riggs
Oh,
is
perfect.
it's perfect. Um Equilibrium deserves
Yeah.
love. Yes, it is possibly the most 2000 action movie ever made,
Yeah.
but what a badass film.
Oh, it was so close to being on my list, but I love the sci-fi nature and the dystopian future nature of it so much. I was like, I'm gonna save it. So spoiler alert, it's gonna be on my sci-fi list.
There you go. There you go. Um and then Broken Arrow is another
Oh
John
yeah.
Woo 90s classic. It's Christian Slater and John Travolta. Travolta plays another fantastic villain. Uh,
Hmm.
that one's just cool. It's not horribly over the top. It's just a really cool movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of classic 90s.
Yeah. And then my last one is Free Fire, which came out in like 2014 or something like that.
Free Fire.
Free Fire. So Free Fire is this movie about it takes place in the 80s, and
Okay.
it's Cillian Murphy, Brie Larson. Well, the cast is huge. Armie Hammer's in it. Uh, oh my god, I'm just blanking on a handful of names now. Anyways, the movie is 90 minutes long, and for about 80 of those minutes, it is a straight gunfight. It is about
Okay.
an arms deal gone wrong, and
Mm.
it's a unique action gunfight film
Okay.
because it's not constant, and it's like messy. No one's a great shot. Everyone's like
Hmm.
greedy and trying to kind of overwhelm each other. You've got two guys feuding over a bar fight from the previous night. There's one of the guys is smoking crack in the middle of the gunfight. It's a
Nice.
cool movie, very unique. It was kind of under the radar for a lot of people, but if you come across
Yeah.
it, I highly recommend Free Fire.
Okay. I have not seen this movie, so I will have to check it out.
I
But
think
I
you'll
like
dig it.
everything you described. Yeah, it sounds kind of like more. I love when shootout scenes are taken more realistically and not like easy or quick or everybody's a good shot, stuff like that. Okay. Um, I feel like somebody's going to say, "Why did you have Die Hard on your list?" And I feel like yes, we have to address that. Die Hard is one of our favorite movies ever. Of course,
Yeah.
we love Die Hard. We've talked about it a bunch. It's I think on both of our Christmas lists.
And it's on my all-time top 10, just all
That too.
encompassing. So because I had it on that list, I did not put it on this one.
Yes. So yes, do not be alarmed. We love Die Hard. But for my honorable mentions, I had The Transporter,
Yeah.
which is such a cool movie. Kind of way before Drive, there was this guy who just drives people around and doesn't get involved, has the similar set of rules. And so Frank Martin, played by Jason Statham, is just that guy. And then turns out he's actually a super cool martial artist badass who then has to go and save this girl and fight to save her. And it's awesome. And then Shoot 'em Up, which I think I think you've talked about Shoot 'em Up
Oh
before.
yeah, it was on my B movie list. Shoot 'em
Okay.
Up is amazing.
It's so silly and ridiculous, but the action, the effects, the jokes, it's a very funny movie to watch, and Clive Owen is incredible in that movie. And then kind of I guess in the same vein, Smokin' Aces is probably similar time frame as well, mid early 2000s, with Jeremy Piven and Ryan Reynolds and Ray Liotta. A lot of big names that I think a lot of people missed out on. Ben Affleck is in it too. It's a movie that I remember renting and being like, this movie is going to be so like middle of the road, lukewarm milk toast. And then I'm like, this movie is awesome. Like it's so fun, so cool, and all of these different people in all of the different roles, taking out all of their different like assassination stuff. It's so cool.
I feel like Smoking Aces was like the Boondock Saints of the 2010s.
Yeah, I could see that. Similar level of notoriety.
I remember going to friends' houses after it came out and people just being like, have you watched Smoking Aces? Because we're going to. And you're like, I've seen it 100 times. I don't need to watch it again, but yeah, we're going to.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind watching it again. That sounds great.
Yeah, Smoking Aces is such a cool movie. I'm glad you brought it up because I feel like it kind of lost its notoriety over the years, but it's definitely one. I rewatched it actually for this list, and rewatching I was like, oh, this movie this is a joy. This is a badass fucking movie. Chris Pine is in it. Kevin Durant is in it. Like
it kicks ass.
Alicia Keys is in it.
Yeah, it held so much going for it. It kind of lost steam, but it deserves credit still.
It does.
And then Jack Reacher, I felt like I couldn't have two Tom Cruise movies, but I really like the Jack Reacher movies. I feel like he does a really good job, and he separates himself well from Mission Impossible and all the other stuff he's done.
Yeah.
Kind of makes it his own and makes it very cool. And then my last one, maybe the more or less known on my list, is Hardcore Henry.
I have yet to see that movie.
It's very different and very weird, and probably not for a lot of people because the entire movie is through this one guy's point of view. And so that point of view camera effect, kind of, it's like he had a GoPro on his head this whole time, basically. And it's fisheye, and most people might not like it, but I really like it, and I think it's very original and very unique. And the effects and the story and the way it tells the story through his eyes and through the jump cuts and things that happen throughout, it's very cool. And it's just so exciting to see it through his eyes. You feel like there's less ways for them to cheat in the movie making process if you're in his actual skull, looking through his eyes and doing all of the stuff that he's doing and seeing this car come at you and going underneath it. And it's so incredible. And flying, like jumping through great heights and falling. It's a very unique experience. So if you like action movies, you owe it to yourself to check it out. It's so cool.
All right. That's one, I feel like you've told me to watch it before. And it's one that I've always been like, man, I don't know how I'll do it, the first person stuff, but but I do like the handheld stuff. So I feel if I can survive that, I should be able to survive a first person.
Yeah, I feel like it's easier to watch than some of the found footage shaky cam stuff out there, for sure. They do a good job of keeping it pretty smooth.
Okay.
But it is very different, kind of a different perspective, and that makes it very fun. It also is kind of weirdly sci-fi, which is partly why I like it.
You do love your sci-fi stuff.
I bring it up all the time. All right, so there you go.
Holy crap, we did it.
Action, survived it. What are we doing next time?
I think we just did that one in about half the time, because if I remember right, the first episode we did was like 4 hours or some shit.
Probably. Part of that was having no idea what we're doing.
True.
But yeah, that's definitely the case, that it took a long time. We're much more efficient now. Next time, we have a very fun episode where we're going to do a movie draft of our favorite rotten movies. Because we realized there's a lot of incredible movies out there that have a below 60% rating, which means that they're rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. And so we're going to pick out which ones we feel like are actually the best, form teams of them, and then you will get to vote on who you think made the best movies out of rotten movies. And that will be a very fun time.
Yeah.
So yeah, check that out. Check us out on movieboners.com. You'll see our full list of this episode and any of the other top 10 lists. They're all listed there. And then, of course, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram. You'll want to be there for when we tell you the fun and exciting thing happening in a couple of weeks. So just to let you know, Instagram is probably where that will hit first.
Yeah. Yep. Make sure you're following us on all the cool social media stuff. Ugh. Well, I mean, it's not cool, but you know what I mean. Follow us on
We
all
make it cool. Ours is cool. It's very fun and not toxic. And actually, it isn't. Our fans are so fun and so cool. We don't have any like toxic comments really, except for that one time that a TikTok went viral and a bunch of weirdos, like other people, found us and they told us a lot of mean things.
All because we trashed a David Lynch 80s not classic, and we misspoke and owned our mistake and corrected ourselves, but we really pissed a lot of people off by saying David Lynch's Dune was not great.
And that the suits were CGI when they were not. They didn't have CGI back then, and we got in a lot of trouble for saying that. But you knew what we meant. It looked silly, and a lot of people agreed with that. It did look silly. So yeah, if you wanted some wholesome social media experiences, just join us on Instagram and all of the other places as well. Then after that, we have a very fun, exciting episode. We're going to have our first guest on.
Yeah, we are.
Never had a guest on the show before. We have a couple, I think, that we want to do this year. And our first one is going to be after the Rotten Movies draft. So stick around for that. That'll be fun.
That one's going to be a lot of fun. So cool. We did it.
We did it. We survived. Now we can go on to the next one.
It's true. It's true. Well, we appreciate everyone out there. So tell all your friends, or keep telling your friends. Let's keep growing this thing. Yeah.
It helps a lot. We appreciate it. And we love you. All right. See y'all later.
Bye.